The morning mist hung low over the mountain training facility as Staff Sergeant Elena Rodriguez made her way to the armory. Her boots crunched softly on the gravel path, the sound muffled by the heavy fog that seemed to swallow everything beyond 50 meters. At 28, she had already spent 8 years in the military, but only the last 2 in special operations. Every day still felt like a test. Every interaction a chance to prove she belonged among the elite warriors who made up her unit. The armory was her sanctuary. While other soldiers gravitated toward the mess hall or recreation areas during downtime, Elena found peace among the precisely organized weapons and equipment. The familiar weight of her rifle in her hands, the methodical process of cleaning and maintenance, the satisfaction of achieving perfect mechanical precision. These things centered her in a way nothing else could. She pushed open the heavy door and stepped into the dimly lit space. The smell of gun oil and metal polish filled her nostrils, a scent that had become as comforting as her grandmother's cooking. She wasn't surprised to find she wasn't alone. Master Sergeant Jake Prophet Morrison sat at one of the cleaning benches, methodically working a cleaning rod through the barrel of his custom rifle. Prophet was a legend in the special operations community. 15 years of service, deployments to every major conflict zone, and a reputation for impossible shots that had earned him his nickname. Some said he could predict where his targets would be before they knew it themselves. Others claimed he had an almost supernatural ability to read wind patterns and atmospheric conditions. What everyone agreed on was that he was the best sniper in the unit, possibly in the entire military. He looked up as Elena entered, his weathered face showing neither surprise nor displeasure. At 42, Prophet had seen countless soldiers come and go. He'd watched promising careers end in failure and witnessed unlikely candidates rise to greatness. His gray eyes, sharp and calculating, took in everything while revealing nothing. "Morning, Rodriguez," he said, his voice gravelly from years of cigarettes he'd quit a decade ago. "Early bird today." "Good morning, Master Sergeant," Elena replied, moving to her assigned locker. She pulled out her rifle case and carried it to a bench across from where Prophet worked. The weapon inside was a thing of beauty, a precision instrument she'd spent months learning to master. Every scratch, every worn spot, every slight imperfection told the story of countless hours of training and several combat deployments. The silence that followed was comfortable rather than awkward. Both soldiers understood the meditative quality of weapon maintenance. Elena began her routine, breaking down her rifle with practiced efficiency. Each component was inspected, cleaned, and prepared with the kind of attention to detail that could mean the difference between life and death in the field. As she worked, Elena became aware of Prophet's subtle observations. He wasn't obviously watching her, but she could feel his attention like a physical presence. It wasn't uncommon. Despite her proven performance in combat, she still faced scrutiny from some of the older soldiers. Being one of only 3 women in the unit meant every action was analyzed, every mistake magnified, every success questioned. "You've been with the team for 2 years," Prophet said suddenly, his hands never pausing in their work. It wasn't really a question, more of an observation. "Yes, Master Sergeant." Elena kept her voice neutral, professional. She'd learned early that showing defensiveness only reinforced doubts about her capabilities. "Afghanistan, Syria, 2 classified operations," he continued, reciting her deployment record from memory. "Good record. No major incidents." Elena nodded, but didn't respond verbally. She sensed there was more coming. Prophet wasn't known for casual conversation. Every word he spoke was deliberate, purposeful. She continued cleaning her rifle, applying just the right amount of oil to each moving part. "Question is," Prophet said, pausing to examine his rifle's bolt, "are you actually good, or just good enough?" The words hung in the air between them. Elena's hands stilled for just a moment before resuming their work. She'd heard variations of this question before, sometimes spoken aloud, sometimes implied by looks or assignments. The doubt that maybe her successes were due to luck, lower standards, or the protection of political correctness rather than genuine skill. I suppose that depends on how you define good enough, Master Sergeant, she replied evenly. Prophet smiled, the first genuine expression she'd seen from him. Fair answer. But I'm not talking about politics or perceptions. I'm talking about capability. Real, measurable skill under pressure. He set down his cleaning rod and turned to face her directly. I've watched you shoot. You're competent. Better than competent, actually. Your fundamentals are solid. Your field craft is improving, and you don't panic under stress. But I haven't seen you push beyond your comfort zone. I haven't seen what happens when you're asked to do something that seems impossible. Elena finished reassembling her rifle and looked up to meet his gaze. Are you asking me something, Master Sergeant? Maybe. Prophet's expression became thoughtful. Tell me about your longest confirmed shot. 1,400 meters, Elena answered without hesitation. Taliban sniper in a compound near Kandahar. Single shot, center mass. Good shot, Prophet acknowledged. Wind, variable, 8 to 12 miles per hour, quartering crosswind. Ammunition, match grade 7.62, 175 grain. Prophet nodded approvingly. Elena's answers were precise, technical, delivered without boasting or false modesty. She knew her business, understood the factors that affected long-range precision shooting. But 1,400 meters, while respectable, was well within the capabilities expected of a special operations sniper. What's the furthest you've ever attempted? He asked. Elena posed coincidence. In training, 1,800 meters. Hit probability was marginal, but I could keep them on target. And in combat, never had a shot presented beyond 1,500. Prophet was quiet for a moment, processing her responses. Elena could almost see him running calculations in his head, weighing her experience against some internal standard. She'd heard rumors about some of his shots, distances that seemed impossible, conditions that would challenge the laws of physics. There's a difference, he said finally, between being a good sniper and being a great one. Good snipers can hit their targets under normal conditions. They follow their training, apply their skills consistently, complete their missions. Nothing wrong with that. The military needs good snipers. He stood up and moved to a window that looked out over the training ranges. Even through the fog, the shapes of targets and obstacles were barely visible in the distance. Great snipers can do things that seem impossible. They can adapt to conditions that would make others give up. They can make shots that change the outcome of entire operations. Elena finished her maintenance routine, but remained seated, sensing that this conversation was building towards something significant. Prophet's reputation wasn't built on casual observations or idle speculation. If he was taking the time to discuss sniper philosophy with her, there was a purpose behind it. Master Sergeant Morrison, she said carefully, are you suggesting I'm not living up to my potential? He turned back to face her, his expression serious. I'm suggesting you haven't been tested yet. Not really. You've performed well within the parameters of your assignments, but you've never been pushed to discover your actual limits. And you think I should be? I think everyone should be. How else do you know what you're truly capable of? Prophet returned to his bench and began reassembling his rifle. I've been thinking about a particular challenge, something that would test not just marksmanship, but mental toughness, adaptability, and the kind of precision that separates the exceptional from the merely competent. Elena felt her pulse quicken slightly. She'd heard stories about Prophet's informal challenges, tests that weren't part of official training, but pushed soldiers beyond their comfort zones. Some had advanced careers. Others had revealed limitations that led to reassignment. All had been transformative in one way or another. What kind of challenge? She asked. Prophet's rifle came together with mechanical precision, each component fitting perfectly into place. He operated the bolt several times, listening to the smooth action, feeling for any irregularities. Satisfied, he set the weapon down and fixed Elena with his penetrating stare. 3,800 meters, he said simply. The number hit Elena like a physical blow. 3,800 meters was beyond the range of most military rifle systems. It was a distance that pushed the boundaries of equipment capabilities and human skill. Very few snipers in the world had made confirmed kills at such ranges, and those who had were legends in the community. That's... She began, then, stopped herself before saying impossible. Prophet wasn't known for impossible requests, only seemingly impossible ones. Challenging? He suggested, reading her expression. Extremely, she admitted. What's the target? Steel target, 12-inch circle. 3 shots, best of 3 counts. Elena did rapid calculations in her head. At 3,800 meters, even the slightest error in wind reading, elevation calculation, or trigger control would send a bullet yards from a target. The ballistic drop would be enormous. The time of flight would allow multiple opportunities for external factors to affect the trajectory. Conditions, she asked. Real world. Whatever Mother Nature gives us when we make the attempt. Equipment. Your choice of rifle and ammunition from available inventory. But use what you choose for all 3 shots. No switching if the first setup doesn't work. Elena nodded slowly. The constraints were fair, but challenging. She'd have to select her equipment carefully, considering not just accuracy potential, but reliability and consistency across multiple shots. Time frame? She asked. 2 weeks to prepare. Research, practice at intermediate ranges, equipment selection, whatever you think you need. Then, we make the attempt. And if I miss? Prophet's expression didn't change. Then you miss. No negative repercussions. No black marks on your record. This is about pushing boundaries, not punishment. And if I hit, then you learn something about yourself that you didn't know before. Elena studied Prophet's face, looking for any sign that this was a setup or a test with hidden agendas. She found none. His expression was neutral, professional, genuinely interested in her response. This was an opportunity, not a trap. Why me? She asked finally. Because you're ready for it. Because you need to know what you're capable of. And because I think you might surprise yourself. The armory fell silent except for the distant sounds of the base awakening to another day of training. Elena weighed the proposal, considering the risks and benefits. Failure would be disappointing, but not career-ending. Success would be extraordinary. I accept, she said. Prophet nodded once, sharply. Good. We'll scout the range this afternoon, identify the target location, and shooting position. You can start your preparation tomorrow. As if summoned by their conversation, the armory door opened, and Sergeant First Class David Chun entered. Chun was the unit's other sniper, a methodical soldier with an exceptional understanding of ballistics and weather patterns. His arrival broke the intensity of the moment between Elena and Prophet. Morning, Master Sergeant Rodriguez, Chun said, nodding to each in turn. He moved to his own locker and began preparing his equipment for the day's training exercises. Chun, Prophet acknowledged. Good timing. Rodriguez here is going to attempt something interesting. Might want to observe her preparation over the next couple weeks. Chun looked up, curious. What kind of interesting? Long-range precision exercise, Elena answered, keeping her voice casual. She wasn't ready to announce the specific distance to anyone else yet. 3,800 meters sounded impossible when spoken aloud. How long? Chun pressed. Elena glanced at Prophet, who nodded slightly. 3,800 meters. Chun's hands stopped moving for a moment, his expression shifting from casual interest to sharp attention. Seriously? Seriously? Jesus, Rodriguez. That's extreme long range. Like world record territory. I know. Chun finished organizing his equipment and closed his locker. You know, I have to ask, is this official training or personal development? Prophet interjected. Rodriguez requested additional training opportunities to expand her capabilities. It was a slight revision of the actual conversation, but Elena didn't correct it. Prophet was providing her with a narrative that would deflect questions about favoritism or special treatment. She appreciated the consideration. Well, shit, Chun said, grinning. If you're going for glory, might as well go big. You'll need help with weather analysis and ballistic calculations. Idea prasiataan asistansa, Elena Roblia. Consider me your meteorologist and computer geek for the next 2 weeks. As the 3 soldiers prepared to leave the armory, Elena felt the weight of the challenge settling on her shoulders. 3,800 meters wasn't just a distance. It was a statement about what she believed herself capable of achieving. The next 2 weeks would test not just her shooting skills, but her ability to prepare systematically for an extraordinary challenge. Prophet paused at the door. "Rodriguez." "Yes, Master Sergeant." "Don't overthink it. Precision shooting at extreme range is still just the fundamentals applied perfectly. Everything else is just mathematics and environmental awareness." "Understood." As they stepped out into the morning mist, Elena realized that her quiet routine of equipment maintenance had just transformed into something much larger. The challenge ahead would push her beyond anything she'd attempted before, testing the limits of her skill, preparation, and mental toughness. The fog was beginning to lift, revealing the mountains that surrounded the training facility. Somewhere out there, at a distance that seemed impossible to bridge with human skill and mechanical precision, a target waited. Elena's journey to reach it would begin with the first step out of the armory and into a level of challenge she'd never faced before. She shouldered her rifle case and followed Prophet toward the range, her mind already beginning to work through the countless variables that would determine success or failure. Wind speed, humidity, temperature, ammunition selection, rifle configuration, sight adjustment, breathing control, trigger squeeze, a symphony of technical elements that would need to harmonize perfectly for 3 brief moments 2 weeks in the future. The challenge had been accepted. The preparation would begin immediately. And somewhere in the back of her mind, Elena began to believe that the impossible might just be within reach. The afternoon sun had burned away the morning fog when Elena followed Prophet to the elevated observation deck overlooking the extended training ranges. From this vantage point, the facility's most distant targets were barely visible even through high-powered spotting scopes. The landscape stretched out in rolling hills and valleys with natural obstacles and varying terrain that made for challenging shooting conditions. Prophet set up a surveying scope and began taking measurements. "Target location is on that ridge," he said, pointing toward a distant hilltop that seemed impossibly far away. 3,812 meters, to be precise. "I had it surveyed last month." Elena squinted through her binoculars, trying to make out any details of the target area. At this distance, everything blurred together into indistinct shapes and shadows. "What's the elevation difference?" "Shooting position is about 200 feet higher than the target. Enough to affect your calculations, but not dramatically." Prophet made notes on a small pad. "Wind patterns are interesting out there. You've got the main valley wind, but also thermal currents that change throughout the day. And the terrain creates some unpredictable eddies." "Have you shot this distance before?" Elena asked. Prophet lowered his scope and looked at her with an expression that might have been amusement. "Once. Took me 7 attempts to get a hit." The admission was both encouraging and intimidating. If someone with Prophet's legendary skills needed multiple attempts, what did that say about her chances? But the fact that it was possible that he had eventually succeeded provided a foundation of hope. "What did you learn from those attempts?" "That preparation matters more than natural ability, and that you have to be willing to fail in order to eventually succeed." Prophet adjusted his scope for better clarity. "First few attempts, I relied too much on instinct and experience. Didn't do enough homework on the specific conditions at this location." Elena pulled out her own notepad and began recording everything she observed. Wind indicators visible in the vegetation, terrain features that might create air currents, sight lines, and potential obstructions. The amount of data she would need to process was overwhelming, but she approached it systematically, one observation at a time. "We'll need to come out here at different times of day," she said, thinking aloud. "Wind patterns will change with temperature variations." "Good thinking." I was planning to suggest morning, midday, and evening observation sessions. They spent the next 2 hours at the observation deck, with Prophet sharing insights about reading environmental conditions at extreme distances. Elena filled several pages with notes, sketches, and calculations. By the time they returned to the main facility, she had a preliminary understanding of the challenge's scope. That evening, Elena spread her research materials across her desk in the barracks. Technical manuals, ballistic calculators, weather prediction guides, and equipment specifications covered every available surface. Her laptop displayed trajectory modeling software that she'd used before, but never for distances this extreme. Chen knocked on her door around 8 o'clock, carrying a thick folder and a laptop of his own. "Thought you might want some help with the number crunching," he said, settling into the room's single chair. "Definitely. I'm already feeling overwhelmed by the variables." Chun opened his laptop and pulled up a sophisticated ballistics program. "I've been playing with some models based on the distance Prophet mentioned. Want to see what we're dealing with?" The screen filled with graphs, charts, and numerical data. Elena leaned forward to study the displays, trying to make sense of the complex calculations. "Okay," Chin began, "using standard 7.62 NATO ammunition at 3,800 meters, we're looking at approximately 28 feet of bullet drop. Flight time is about 4.5 seconds. Elena whistled softly. 4.5 seconds is an eternity. Anything can happen to the wind in that time. Exactly, which is why wind reading becomes the critical factor. A 5-mile-per-hour crosswind error translates to about 6 feet of horizontal displacement at this distance." Chun switched to another screen showing wind velocity charts. "I've been researching historical weather data for this area. The good news is that winds are generally predictable in terms of direction. The bad news is that velocity varies significantly throughout the day and can change rapidly." Elena studied the charts, looking for patterns that might help with timing the attempt. "What about ammunition selection? That's where things get interesting." Chin pulled up another set of data. "Standard match ammunition might not be optimal at this distance. The ballistic coefficient becomes crucial for maintaining velocity and stability over such a long flight path. What do you recommend?" "I'm thinking heavier projectiles, maybe 185 or 190 grain instead of the standard 175. Better wind resistance, more stable flight characteristics. The trade-off is increased drop, but that's predictable. Wind drift isn't." Elena made notes as Chun explained the ballistic considerations. The technical complexity was staggering, but she found herself drawn deeper into the puzzle. Each variable was a piece that needed to fit perfectly with all the others. "What about rifle selection?" she asked. "That's your call, but I'd suggest the Accuracy International system in the armory. It's designed for extreme long-range work, and the barrel has proven consistency at extended distances. They worked until after midnight, building preliminary models and identifying the equipment configurations that offered the best theoretical performance." Elena's initial feeling of being overwhelmed gradually gave way to systematic understanding. The challenge was enormous, but it was also logical. Success would depend on preparation, not luck. The next morning, Elena began her practical preparation in earnest. She selected the Accuracy International rifle Chan had recommended and spent hours familiarizing herself with its specific characteristics. Every rifle had individual quirks, slight variations in point of impact, unique preferences for ammunition types, particular sensitivities to environmental conditions. She started with known distance shooting at more reasonable ranges, working methodically outward from 600 meters to 1,200, then 1,800. Each session provided data about how the rifle performed under different conditions, how various ammunition types grouped, and how her own shooting fundamentals held up under pressure. Prophet observed several of these sessions, taking notes, but offering minimal commentary. Elena appreciated his restraint. She needed to develop her own understanding of the equipment and conditions rather than relying on someone else's experience. By the end of the first week, Elena had established baseline performance data for her chosen rifle and ammunition combination. She could consistently hit targets at 1,800 meters under good conditions, and her hit probability remained reasonable even with moderate wind and changing light. "You're ready to start working toward the actual distance," Prophet announced during one of their evening briefing sessions. "Tomorrow we'll set up an intermediate target at 2,800 meters." Elena felt her stomach tighten. 2,800 meters would be 1,000 meters beyond her furthest successful shots. The step up in difficulty would be significant. What's the target configuration? Same as the final challenge. 12-inch steel circle. We'll give you spotting assistance for these practice sessions so you can see your impacts and make adjustments. The next morning dawned clear and relatively calm. Elena made her way to the shooting position with nervous anticipation. All her preparation was about to be tested at a distance that would challenge everything she thought she knew about precision shooting. Prophet had already set up the spotting scope and made initial wind readings. "Conditions are about as good as we could ask for," he reported. "Light crosswind, stable atmospheric pressure, good visibility." Elena settled into her shooting position and began her pre-shot routine. Rifle setup, sight adjustment, ammunition preparation, position refinement. Each step was performed with deliberate precision, following the systematic approach she developed during her practice sessions. The target at 2,800 meters was barely visible through her scope, appearing as a tiny dark circle against the lighter background of the hillside. Elena had to remind herself that this was still 1,000 meters short of her ultimate goal. She took her first shot, applying all the wind and elevation corrections her calculations suggested. The bullet's flight time seemed endless. Finally, Prophet's voice came through her earpiece. "Miss, high and right about 3 feet." Elena made adjustments and fired again. Closer, still high, about 18 inches. The third shot felt perfect. Everything had aligned. Breathing, sight picture, trigger control follow through. "Hit," Prophet reported. Center ring. Relief flooded through Elena, followed immediately by satisfaction. 2,800 meters was no longer theoretical. She had proven that extreme long-range precision was within her capabilities. "Good shot," Prophet said as she began packing her equipment. "But remember, you just added 1,000 meters to your proven range. The final 1,000 meters to 3,800 will be proportionally more difficult." Elena nodded, understanding the warning. Success at 2,800 meters was encouraging, but not predictive of success at the ultimate distance. Each additional meter multiplied the complexity exponentially. Over the following days, Elena continued practicing at extended ranges, working her way gradually outward. 3,200 meters proved significantly more challenging than 2,800. Wind reading became critically important, and small errors in equipment setup or shooting fundamentals resulted in complete misses. Chun continued providing technical support, refining ballistic calculations, and analyzing weather patterns. His assistance was invaluable, but Elena insisted on making all final decisions herself. This was her challenge, and she needed to develop the confidence to trust her own judgment. The breakthrough came during a practice session at 3,500 meters. Elena had been struggling with consistency, hitting targets sporadically, but without the reliability that would be necessary for the final challenge. On this particular afternoon, something clicked. Her wind reading felt more intuitive, her rifle handling more natural, her mental approach calmer, and more focused. She fired 5 consecutive shots, hitting the target 4 times. The single miss was close enough that it would have been acceptable under hunting conditions. For the first time, Elena began to believe that 3,800 meters might be achievable. "You're starting to understand the rhythm," Prophet observed as they reviewed the session. "Long-range shooting isn't about forcing perfection. It's about creating conditions where perfection can occur naturally." "What do you mean?" "You can't control all the variables, so you have to work with them instead of fighting them. Read the conditions, adapt your technique, trust your preparation. When everything aligns, take the shot. When it doesn't, wait for a better opportunity." Elena considered this advice as she cleaned her rifle that evening. The technical aspects of extreme long-range shooting were important, but the mental game seemed equally crucial. Success would require not just knowledge and skill, but also patience and the confidence to trust her preparation when the moment arrived. The second week of preparation flew by quickly. Elena continued practicing at various distances, refining her technique and building consistency. Weather observations were conducted at different times of day to understand the patterns that affected the target area. Equipment was checked and rechecked to ensure optimal performance. 3 days before the scheduled attempt, Elena achieved her best practice session yet. At 3,600 meters, she managed 2 hits out of 3 attempts under challenging wind conditions. The shots weren't perfect, but they demonstrated that she could perform at the required level even when conditions weren't ideal. "You're ready," Prophet announced after reviewing her performance data. "Your preparation has been thorough, your technique is sound, and your equipment is optimized. The question now is whether you can execute under pressure." Elena felt ready, but also nervous. 2 weeks of intensive preparation had brought her to this point, but the final challenge would test everything she'd learned in a single decisive moment. Success or failure would be determined by her ability to apply all her preparation when it mattered most. The night before the attempt, Elena organized all her equipment and reviewed her final shooting plan. Weather predictions looked favorable, with light winds and clear skies forecast for the morning hours. All the technical preparations were complete. Tomorrow would reveal whether her journey of preparation had been sufficient to bridge the impossible distance between her position and the target 3,800 meters away. She fell asleep that night with her rifle nearby, ready for the most challenging shot of her career. Elena woke before her alarm. Her internal clock adjusted to the rhythm of military life. The barracks were still dark and quiet, but she felt fully alert, her mind already focused on the challenge ahead. She had dreamed of the shot, not the anxious nightmare she'd expected, but calm, precise imagery of perfect execution. After a light breakfast and final equipment check, Elena made her way to the shooting position. Dawn was breaking over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The beauty of the morning stood in stark contrast to the technical precision required for the task ahead. Prophet was already at the position, having arrived early to conduct preliminary weather observations. Several other unit members had gathered as well, word of the attempt having spread despite Elena's preference for privacy. Chun was setting up atmospheric monitoring equipment, while a small group of observers positioned themselves safely behind the firing line. "Morning, Rodriguez," Prophet greeted her. "Conditions are looking good. Light winds, stable pressure, excellent visibility." Elena nodded, trying to project calm confidence while her heart rate elevated slightly. This was it, the culmination of 2 weeks of intensive preparation. Everything she had learned, practiced, and refined would be tested in the next few minutes. She began her setup routine methodically, the familiar movements helping to center her focus. Rifle positioned, bipod adjusted, scope settings verified, ammunition prepared. Each step was performed with deliberate precision, following the systematic approach that had become second nature during her preparation. The target at 3,800 meters was barely visible even through her high-powered scope. Elena had to use nearby terrain features as reference points to locate the small steel circle that represented success or failure. The distance seemed impossible, farther than she had ever attempted to influence anything with human action. Initial wind reading is 3 to 5 miles per hour, left to right. Chin reported from his position with the atmospheric monitoring equipment. Temperature is steady, humidity low, pressure stable. Elena made notes and began calculating her initial scope adjustments. The ballistic mathematics were complex, but her 2 weeks of preparation had made the process almost automatic. Elevation adjustment for bullet drop, windage correction for atmospheric drift, compensation for the slight downward angle of the shot. "Take your time," Prophet advised. "No pressure except what you put on yourself. This is about learning what you're capable of, not proving anything to anyone else." Elena appreciated the reminder, but she felt the weight of observation from the gathered soldiers. Word of a 3,800-meter attempt had generated significant interest. Some were undoubtedly hoping to witness something extraordinary, while others might be expecting failure. She pushed both possibilities from her mind and focused on her preparation. Her first shot would be crucial. Even with spotting assistance, corrections at this distance were challenging. A well-placed first round would provide valuable information for subsequent attempts. A wild miss might offer little useful feedback. Elena settled into her shooting position and began her breathing routine. Deep, controlled breaths to oxygenate her blood and calm her nervous system. The rifle felt familiar in her hands, its weight and balance now intimately known after hundreds of practice rounds. Through her scope, the target appeared as a tiny dark circle against the hillside background. Elena forced herself to see it as just another target, no different from the countless steel plates she had engaged during training. The distance was extreme, but the fundamentals remained the same. Wind holding steady, Chen reported. Conditions are optimal. Elena took a final deep breath and began her trigger squeeze. Slow, straight-back pressure with the pad of her index finger. The crosshairs settled on the center of the distant target. Everything felt aligned: breathing, sight picture, rifle position, mental focus. The rifle fired with its familiar sharp crack. Elena maintained her sight picture through the recoil, watching through her scope as the bullet began its long journey downrange. At 3,800 meters, flight time would be nearly 5 seconds, an eternity in precision shooting. Impact, Prophet announced through the spotting scope. Low and left, approximately 4 feet. Elena felt a mixture of disappointment and encouragement. The shot had missed, but not by much considering the distance involved. More importantly, the miss was consistent with her ballistic calculations. The bullet had traveled the full distance and struck near the intended target. She made adjustments to her scope settings, accounting for the observed point of impact. The second shot would benefit from this real-world feedback, assuming wind conditions remain stable. Wind still light and consistent, Chen reported. You're cleared for your second attempt. Elena chambered a fresh round and settled back into her shooting position. The scope adjustments had been precisely calculated based on the first shot's impact point. If her wind reading was accurate and her shooting fundamentals remained sound, the second shot should be much closer to the target. The pressure felt different now. The first shot had proven the distance was achievable. The second would determine whether her adjustments were correct and her technique consistent. Elena forced herself to follow the same deliberate process, not rushing despite her eagerness to see the results. Her breathing calmed, the crosshairs steadied on the target's center, and the trigger broke cleanly. Again, Elena held her sight picture through the recoil, mentally tracking the bullet's flight path toward the distant target. Stand by, Prophet announced, his voice neutral. Elena couldn't tell from his tone whether the shot had been successful or not. The seconds stretched endlessly as he confirmed what he was seeing through the spotting scope. Hit, he said finally. Center ring. Cheers erupted from the observers behind the firing line. Elena felt a surge of elation and relief. She had done it. 3,800 meters. The distance that had seemed impossible 2 weeks ago was now a confirmed reality. But the challenge wasn't complete. The test was best 2 out of 3 shots. One hit, no matter how spectacular, could be attributed to luck. Consistency would demonstrate true capability. Elena remained in position, cycling the rifle's bolt to chamber her third and final round. The pressure now was different again. No longer the fear of complete failure, but the desire to prove that her success was replicable. Wind beginning to pick up slightly, Chen reported. Still manageable, but you might want to make this shot soon. Elena nodded, understanding that atmospheric conditions could change rapidly. The window for optimal shooting conditions might be closing. She needed to make her final attempt while the environment remained favorable. She settled into the rifle once more, applying the same scope settings that had produced the successful second shot. If conditions remained constant, this shot should also hit the target. The question was whether her mental state and physical technique could maintain the required precision under increasing pressure. The target seemed even smaller through her scope now, perhaps because she was more aware of what success looked like. Elena reminded herself that this was the same shot she had just made successfully. Nothing had changed except her perception of the stakes involved. Her breathing routine calmed her elevated heart rate. The crosshairs found their natural point of aim on the target center. The trigger pressure built gradually, consistently, until the rifle fired with perfect surprise timing. Elena knew immediately that the shot felt good. Everything had come together, breathing, sight picture, trigger control follow through. The rifle's recoil felt familiar and comfortable, suggesting that her position and hold had remained consistent. Impact, Prophet announced. Aye, but still in the target ring. 2 hits out of 3. The celebration behind the firing line was more subdued this time. Recognition that Elena had just accomplished something genuinely remarkable. 2 hits out of 3 attempts at 3,800 meters represented precision that few snipers ever achieved. Elena remained in position for a moment longer, processing what she had just accomplished. The challenge that had seemed impossible 2 weeks ago was now complete. Through systematic preparation, technical understanding, and disciplined execution, she had extended her proven capabilities by more than 2,000 meters. Prophet approached as Elena began securing her rifle. "Outstanding shooting," he said, his expression showing genuine satisfaction. 2 hits out of 3 at that distance represents exceptional precision. "Thank you, Master Sergeant. I couldn't have done it without your guidance and Chin's technical support. You did the shooting. We just helped with the homework." Chin joined them, grinning broadly. "Jesus, Rodriguez. That was incredible to watch. The second shot especially, perfect elevation, perfect windage. Like the rifle was guided by a laser." Elena felt the accomplishment settling into her consciousness. She had proven something important to herself, something that went beyond the specific challenge of hitting a distant target. She had demonstrated that systematic preparation and disciplined execution could overcome seemingly impossible obstacles. As the group began walking back toward the main facility, Elena reflected on the lessons learned during the past 2 weeks. The technical aspects had been important: ballistics, weather reading, equipment selection. But the mental game had been equally crucial. Learning to trust her preparation, to remain calm under pressure, to execute fundamental skills despite extraordinary circumstances. "So what's next?" Chen asked as they walked. "Now that you've conquered 3,800 meters, where do you set your sights?" Elena smiled, but her answer was serious. "Now I focus on becoming more consistent at the distances I'll actually encounter in combat." This was about pushing boundaries and learning what's possible. But real effectiveness comes from reliability under operational conditions. Prophet nodded approvingly. "Exactly right. The goal isn't to become a trick shot artist. It's to expand your capabilities so you can be more effective when it matters." They spent the rest of the morning analyzing the data from the shooting session. Atmospheric conditions, rifle performance, ammunition consistency, shooting technique. Every aspect was reviewed to extract lessons that could be applied to future training. The technical analysis confirmed what Elena had felt during the shots. Her preparation had been thorough, her equipment selection appropriate, and her execution sound. The success wasn't due to luck or favorable conditions, but to systematic application of precision shooting principles. Word of Elena's achievement spread quickly through the special operations community. 3,800-meter precision shooting was rare enough to generate attention from senior leadership and peer units. Elena received congratulatory messages from soldiers she had never met, recognition from commanders she had only heard of. But the most meaningful acknowledgement came from Prophet during their debriefing session. "You've proven something important," he said. "Not just about your shooting ability, but about your capacity for growth and adaptation. That's what separates good soldiers from exceptional ones." Elena understood that the challenge had been about more than marksmanship. It had been a test of her willingness to attempt something that seemed beyond her capabilities, her ability to prepare systematically for an extraordinary challenge, and her mental toughness under pressure. The lessons learned would extend far beyond sniper training. In future missions, when faced with seemingly impossible tasks or overwhelming odds, she would remember the feeling of making an impossible shot through preparation and execution. The confidence gained from this experience would influence every aspect of her military career. As Elena cleaned her rifle that evening, she reflected on how much had changed in just 2 weeks. She was the same soldier who had entered the armory for routine maintenance, but she was also fundamentally different. Her understanding of her own capabilities had been expanded dramatically. The target at 3,800 meters had been more than a piece of steel on a distant hillside. It had been a symbol of the boundaries she had placed on herself, the limits she had accepted without testing. By reaching out to touch that target with precision and consistency, she had learned that many boundaries exist only in perception. Tomorrow would bring new training, new challenges, new opportunities to apply the lessons learned. But tonight, Elena allowed herself to savor the satisfaction of accomplishment. She had accepted an impossible challenge and made it possible through preparation, persistence, and precise execution. The rifle that had carried her bullets across 3,800 meters sat quietly in its case, ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. Elena's journey as a sniper had reached a new level, but she understood that this achievement was not an endpoint. It was a foundation upon which greater capabilities could be built. Outside her window, the mountains stretched into the distance, their peaks shrouded in clouds. Somewhere out there, other challenges waited. Other opportunities to test the limits of human capability and mechanical precision. Elena looked forward to discovering what might be possible when preparation met opportunity and skill aligned with determination. 3 weeks after the 3,800-meter achievement, Elena found herself in a briefing room she had never seen before. The walls were lined with maps of various global hotspots, and the attendees included officers whose ranks far exceeded anything she had previously encountered. Colonel Sarah Mitchell, the Special Operations Group Commander, sat at the head of the conference table reviewing a thick folder marked with various classification stamps. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, Colonel Mitchell began, "Your recent performance has generated considerable interest at levels well above my pay grade. We've been asked to brief you on some enhanced mission parameters." Elena maintained her composure despite feeling slightly overwhelmed by the setting. The achievement at the shooting range had been personally satisfying, but she hadn't expected it to lead to high-level briefings with senior leadership. Prophet sat to her left, his expression neutral but attentive. Elena realized that he had likely engineered the entire sequence of events, understanding that her proven capabilities at extreme range would open doors to operational assignments that required such specialized skills. Over the past 18 months, the colonel continued, we've encountered several situations where traditional sniper engagement ranges were insufficient for mission success. Targets positioned at distances beyond normal rifle capabilities, political considerations requiring extreme standoff distances, environmental factors limiting close approach options. Elena nodded, beginning to understand where the conversation was heading. Her demonstration had proven that certain previously impossible missions might now be within reach. "We have a developing situation," Colonel Mitchell said, opening her folder to reveal satellite photographs and intelligence reports. High-value target, currently believed to be operating from a compound in a denied area. Traditional approach methods are not viable due to enemy air defenses and extensive ground surveillance networks. The photographs showed a remote mountainous region with a fortified compound positioned on a high ridge. Elena studied the images, automatically calculating sight lines and potential shooting positions based on her recent training experience. The target spends considerable time on an elevated observation deck, the colonel continued. Our intelligence suggests he maintains a predictable routine, appearing at specific times to survey the surrounding area. The challenge is that effective engagement ranges from any feasible approach position exceed 4,000 meters. Elena felt her pulse quicken. 4,000 meters was beyond even her recent achievement, pushing into territory where very few military snipers had ever operated successfully. The complexity would be staggering. "Ma'am," Elena said carefully, 4,000 meters represents significant challenges in terms of equipment capabilities, atmospheric conditions, and target acquisition. The margin for error becomes extremely small. "We understand the technical difficulties," Colonel Mitchell replied. "That's why this briefing is exploratory rather than operational. We need to determine whether such a mission is theoretically possible before we invest resources in detailed planning." Prophet spoke for the first time since entering the room. Rodriguez has demonstrated capabilities at 3,800 meters under control conditions. 4,000 meters would require extensive additional preparation and equipment modifications. Elena appreciated Prophet's measured response. He was supporting her while also establishing realistic expectations about the increased difficulty. What's the timeline for a potential mission? Elena asked. 6 to 8 weeks, assuming the intelligence picture remains stable and higher authority approves the operation. Elena considered the time frame. It would allow for significant additional training and equipment preparation, but it would also require developing capabilities well beyond anything she had previously attempted. I would need to research equipment options, she said. Standard military rifle systems might not be optimal for that distance. We'd be looking at custom configurations or specialized platforms. Resources would be made available, Colonel Mitchell assured her. This operation has been designated high priority. Cost and equipment availability are not limiting factors. The conversation continued for another hour, covering intelligence details, support requirements, insertion, and extraction plans. Elena found herself drawn into the operational complexity despite her reservations about the technical challenges involved. As the briefing concluded, Colonel Mitchell addressed Elena directly. Staff Sergeant, I want to be clear about something. This mission is entirely voluntary. Your proven capabilities have created an opportunity, but that doesn't create an obligation. We're asking whether you believe such a shot is possible, not demanding that you attempt it. Elena appreciated the clarification. The military's volunteer ethos was important, especially for operations that push the boundaries of human capability. I understand, ma'am. I'd like some time to research the technical requirements before providing a definitive answer. Take all the time you need. Prophet will coordinate any resources you require for your analysis. After the senior officers departed, Elena remained in the briefing room with Prophet, studying the satellite photographs and intelligence reports. The target compound seemed impossibly distant, positioned in terrain that would challenge every aspect of long-range precision shooting. This is significantly different from the training range, Elena observed. Everything about real operations is different, Prophet replied. But the fundamental principles remain the same. The question is whether the increased complexity can be managed systematically. Elena spread the photographs across the table, studying possible shooting positions and environmental factors. We need to conduct detailed reconnaissance of the actual site. Atmospheric conditions will be different from our training facility. Equipment requirements will be more demanding. All manageable if we approach it methodically. You think it's possible? Prophet was quiet for a moment, considering the question seriously. I think you've proven that extraordinary precision is achievable with proper preparation. Whether that extends to 4,000 meters under operational conditions, that's what we need to determine. Over the following days, Elena threw herself into research with the same intensity that had characterized her preparation for the 3,800-meter challenge. But the complexity was significantly greater. 4,000 meters wasn't just 200 meters farther. It represented a quantum leap in difficulty. She began by researching equipment options. Standard military sniper rifles, while excellent for their intended purposes, were not optimized for such extreme ranges. She needed to investigate custom platforms, specialized ammunition, advanced optics, and environmental monitoring equipment. Chun joined her research efforts, bringing his expertise in ballistics and atmospheric modeling. Together, they built computer models that simulated bullet flight characteristics at the extended distance. The results were sobering. At 4,000 meters, flight time approaches 6 seconds, Chun reported during one of their analysis sessions. Wind drift becomes the dominant factor in shot placement. A small error in wind reading results in a complete miss by several meters. Elena studied the ballistic charts, trying to understand the mathematical relationships that would govern success or failure. What about ammunition selection? We're beyond the capabilities of standard military rounds. We need to look at custom loads, possibly larger caliber systems. The .338 Lapua or .300 Winchester Magnum might offer better performance characteristics. Elena nodded, making notes. Changing calibers would mean learning a completely different rifle system with unique ballistic properties and handling characteristics. The preparation time would need to account for developing proficiency with unfamiliar equipment. The weather analysis was equally challenging. The target location was in a mountainous region with complex atmospheric patterns. Thermal currents, altitude effects, and seasonal weather variations would all influence shooting conditions. We'd need on-site meteorological support, Elena concluded after reviewing the climate data. Real-time atmospheric monitoring at both the shooting position and target area. That's possible, Shin replied. But it adds operational complexity. More personnel, more equipment, more potential for compromise. Elena understood the trade-offs involved. The technical requirements for success were pushing against operational security considerations. Every additional element increased the mission's complexity and risk profile. After 2 weeks of intensive research, Elena requested a follow-up briefing with Colonel Mitchell. She had reached some preliminary conclusions about the feasibility of the proposed operation, but the answers were more nuanced than simple yes or no responses. The technical challenges are significant, Elena began, presenting her findings to the assembled staff. Success would require specialized equipment, extensive additional training, detailed environmental analysis, and real-time meteorological support. She outlined the specific requirements she had identified. Custom rifle platform in a larger caliber, hand-loaded ammunition optimized for extreme range, advanced optics with ballistic compensation features, portable weather monitoring equipment, and at least 6 weeks of preparation time. More importantly, Elena continued, the margin for error is extremely small. Even with optimal preparation, success probability would be significantly lower than conventional sniper engagements. We'd be operating at the absolute limits of current technology and human capability. Colonel Mitchell listened carefully to Elena's assessment. Are you saying it's impossible? No, ma'am. I'm saying it's extremely difficult and would require resources and preparation time that might not be justified by the probability of success. Prophet spoke up from his position at the table. What Rodriguez is describing is achievable, but it represents a significant evolution in our capabilities. It's not just about making one shot. It's about developing institutional knowledge for future similar missions. Elena appreciated Prophet's broader perspective. The immediate mission was important, but the long-term implications might be even more significant. Successfully demonstrating 4,000-meter precision would establish new benchmarks for special operations capabilities. What would you need to make this work? Colonel Mitchell asked. Elena referred to her notes. 6 to 8 weeks minimum for preparation. Access to custom equipment and specialized ammunition. Detailed reconnaissance of the target area. Meteorological support during the operation. And realistic expectations about success probability. Define realistic. Elena had anticipated this question and prepared a careful answer. Under optimal conditions, with perfect preparation and favorable weather, I estimate 60 to 70% probability of success. Under typical field conditions, that drops to perhaps 40%. The room was quiet as the implications sank in. Military operations typically required much higher confidence levels for mission-critical actions. A 60% success rate might not be acceptable for some scenarios. However, Elena continued, even if the primary mission objective fails, the capability development would provide valuable experience for future operations. We'd be expanding the envelope of what's possible. Colonel Mitchell nodded slowly. I need to discuss this with higher authority. Your analysis will be invaluable in helping them make an informed decision. The meeting concluded without a definitive answer, but Elena sensed that the momentum was building toward approval. The challenge appealed to the military's inherent desire to push boundaries and develop new capabilities. That evening, Elena found herself back in the armory, surrounded by the familiar smells of gun oil and metal polish. But her perspective had changed dramatically since her first conversation with Prophet. The routine maintenance, that had once provided simple satisfaction now felt like preparation for extraordinary challenges. Chen joined her, bringing coffee and a thoughtful expression. "Penny for your thoughts." "Wondering how we got here," Elena replied. "3 weeks ago, I was just trying to prove I could hit a distant target. Now we're talking about operational missions that seemed impossible." "Capability creates opportunity," Chen observed. "Once you prove something can be done, people start asking whether it should be done." Elena considered his point. Her achievement at the training range had been personally satisfying, but it had also opened doors to responsibilities she hadn't anticipated. With expanded capabilities came expanded expectations. "Do you think I should do it?" she asked. Chen was quiet for a moment, considering the question seriously. "I think you're the only person currently capable of even attempting it. Whether you should, that's a decision only you can make." Elena nodded, understanding that the choice was ultimately hers despite the institutional pressures and operational requirements. The military would support whatever decision she made, but the responsibility for success or failure would rest with her. As she cleaned her rifle that night, Elena reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. Each challenge had built upon the previous one, expanding her capabilities and confidence in incremental steps. But 4,000 meters would represent more than incremental progress. It would be a fundamental expansion of what was considered possible. Outside the armory windows, the mountain stood silhouetted against the starlit sky. Somewhere beyond those peaks, challenging missions waited for soldiers with the skills and courage to attempt the impossible. Elena was beginning to understand that her role might be to explore the boundaries of human capability, to discover what became possible when preparation met opportunity and determination confronted impossibility. The decision about the 4,000-meter mission would come soon. But regardless of the outcome, Elena knew that her journey as a sniper had evolved beyond personal achievement. She was now part of the military's ongoing effort to push the boundaries of what elite soldiers could accomplish when faced with seemingly impossible challenges. Her rifle sat quietly in its case, ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. Elena's understanding of her own capabilities had been transformed once again, expanded by the recognition that extraordinary achievement opened doors to even greater challenges. The question was no longer what she could accomplish, but what she was willing to attempt in service of her country and her unit's mission. 6 weeks later, Elena lay prone on a rocky outcrop at an elevation of 8,200 feet, her breathing controlled despite the thin mountain air. The custom rifle beside her represented the culmination of intensive preparation and technological advancement. Built around a .338 Lapua Magnum platform with a match-grade barrel and advanced optics system, it was optimized specifically for extreme long-range precision. The target compound lay 4,127 meters away, according to the laser rangefinder readings Prophet had taken at dawn. Through her scope, Elena could barely make out the observation deck, where intelligence indicated the high-value target would appear within the next hour. The distance seemed impossibly vast, stretching across valleys and ridgelines that disappeared into the morning haze. "Atmospheric conditions are stable," reported Sergeant Lisa Park, the meteorological specialist who had joined the team specifically for this operation. "Wind speed 3 to 7 miles per hour, variable direction. Temperature steady at 42 degrees. Humidity low." Elena acknowledged the report with a slight nod, not wanting to disturb her shooting position. She had spent the past hour settling into the rocky hide site, adjusting her rifle rest and confirming her scope settings. Every detail had been checked and rechecked according to the systematic approach that had become her signature. The preparation for this moment had been unlike anything in Elena's military experience. 6 weeks of intensive training with a new rifle system, hundreds of rounds of custom-loaded ammunition tested for consistency, detailed reconnaissance of the target area, and endless ballistic calculations that pushed computer modeling programs to their limits. The breakthrough had come during the 4th week of preparation. Working with a civilian long-range shooting expert contracted specifically for this mission, Elena had learned advanced techniques for reading atmospheric conditions at extreme distances. The skills went far beyond traditional military sniper training, incorporating meteorological knowledge that bordered on scientific research. Movement on the observation deck. Prophet reported through the spotting scope position 30 meters to Elena's left. 2 individuals. Stand by for positive target identification. Elena felt her heart rate increase slightly despite her breathing exercises. The intelligence picture had been accurate so far. The target did maintain predictable routines, appearing on the elevated deck at approximately the same time each morning. But confirmation would be necessary before any shot could be authorized. Through her scope, Elena could see tiny figures moving on the distant platform. At 4,127 meters, human identification was impossible through magnified optics. The team relied on intelligence reports and behavioral patterns to confirm target identity. The responsibility for positive identification rested with Prophet and his advanced spotting equipment. Positive identification confirmed, Prophet announced after several minutes of observation. Target is on the northeast corner of the platform, stationary position facing our direction. Elena made final adjustments to her scope settings, accounting for the real-time atmospheric conditions Park continued to monitor. The ballistic calculations have been refined throughout the morning as temperature and humidity readings were updated. At this distance, even small environmental changes could affect bullet trajectory significantly. The custom ammunition loaded specifically for this mission used 300-grain bullets optimized for extreme-range ballistic performance. Flight time would be approximately 5.8 seconds, during which atmospheric conditions could change dramatically. Elena would have one opportunity to make the shot before the target's routine would likely bring him back inside the compound. Wind holding steady at 5 miles per hour, quartering crosswind from the left, Park reported. All atmospheric conditions within acceptable parameters. Elena settled her breathing and began her final pre-shot routine. The rifle felt comfortable despite its unfamiliar weight and dimensions. 6 weeks of intensive training had made its handling characteristics second nature, but the pressure of operational conditions was different from anything she had experienced on training ranges. Through her scope, the target appeared as a tiny figure against the distant platform. Elena reminded herself that this was fundamentally the same shot she had practiced hundreds of times during preparation. The distance was extreme, but the principles remained unchanged. Proper sight picture, controlled breathing, smooth trigger squeeze, consistent follow-through. "You are cleared to engage," came the voice of the mission commander through her earpiece. Elena took a final deep breath and began applying pressure to the trigger. The crosshairs settled on the center of the distant target. Everything felt aligned. Rifle position, sight picture, breathing rhythm, mental focus. This was the moment when 6 weeks of preparation would be tested in a single, critical second. The rifle fired with its distinctive sharp crack, the sound echoing off the surrounding mountains. Elena maintained her sight picture through the recoil, watching through her scope as the bullet began its nearly 6-second journey across the impossible distance. Time seemed suspended as Elena waited for the outcome. Nearly 6 seconds of flight time felt like an eternity when success or failure hung in the balance. She remained motionless in her shooting position, knowing that any movement might affect her ability to observe the impact. Impact, Prophet announced through the spotting scope. Target down. Relief and satisfaction flooded through Elena, followed immediately by professional focus on potential follow-up actions. The primary objective had been achieved, but operational procedures required continued vigilance until extraction was complete. Confirm target neutralization. The mission commander's voice came through the communication system. Target is down and not moving, Prophet reported after several minutes of observation. No apparent response from compound personnel. Elena began preparing for extraction while maintaining her shooting position. The operation had succeeded, but they remained in enemy territory with limited options for escape if their position was discovered. Success in the primary mission was only the first step in a complex operation. Outstanding shooting, Rodriguez, Prophet said quietly as Elena began packing her equipment. That was precision at a level very few people will ever achieve. Elena nodded, accepting the praise while focusing on post-mission procedures. The technical achievement was significant, but the operational success was what mattered. The high-value target had been neutralized from a distance that had seemed impossible just months earlier. As the team prepared to move to their extraction point, Elena reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. From routine rifle maintenance in the base armory to operational success at over 4,000 meters, her capabilities had expanded beyond anything she could have imagined. The extraction proceeded without incident, but Elena's mind was already processing lessons learned from the operation. Equipment performance, environmental factors, shooting technique under pressure. Every aspect would be analyzed to extract knowledge that could be applied to future missions. 3 days later, Elena found herself back in the familiar briefing room where the mission had first been proposed. Colonel Mitchell and her staff were conducting a formal after-action review, documenting every aspect of the operation for future reference. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, the colonel began, "Your performance on this operation has exceeded all expectations. You've demonstrated capabilities that expand our operational options significantly." Elena maintained her professional bearing despite feeling pride in the achievement. "Thank you, ma'am. The success was due to excellent team support and thorough preparation." The technical analysis confirms that this was the longest confirmed sniper shot in military history, Colonel Mitchell continued. "More importantly, you've proven that such capabilities can be developed systematically and applied operationally." The briefing continued for 2 hours, covering every aspect of the mission in detail. Equipment performance, training methodology, operational procedures, and lessons learned were all documented for future reference. Elena's achievement would become the foundation for developing similar capabilities throughout the special operations community. After the formal briefing, Prophet approached Elena privately. "You realize this changes everything for you," he said. "You've proven capabilities that very few people in the world possess. That brings opportunities, but also responsibilities." Elena understood what he meant. Her demonstrated precision at extreme ranges would likely lead to additional specialized missions, advanced training opportunities, and eventually positions where she would be responsible for developing these capabilities in others. "I'm ready for whatever comes next," she replied. Prophet smiled, the same expression Elena had seen after her first successful shot at 3,800 meters. "I believe you are. The question now is how far you want to push the boundaries of what's possible." Over the following weeks, Elena's operational success generated significant attention within the military and intelligence communities. Requests for briefings came from various agencies interested in understanding how extreme long-range precision capabilities could be applied to their missions. Elena found herself traveling to different military installations, sharing lessons learned, and helping to develop training programs for other snipers. Her experience became the foundation for advancing the entire field of extreme long-range precision shooting. But perhaps the most significant impact was on Elena's understanding of her own potential. The journey from 3,800 meters to over 4,000 had taught her that boundaries often existed primarily in perception. When approached systematically with proper preparation and unwavering determination, seemingly impossible challenges could become achievable objectives. 6 months after the successful operation, Elena received notification of her promotion to Sergeant First Class and assignment as the lead instructor for the military's new Extreme Long-Range Precision program. Her role would be to develop the next generation of snipers capable of engaging targets at distances that had previously been considered impossible. Standing once again in the armory where her journey had begun, Elena reflected on how much had changed since that first conversation with Prophet. The routine of equipment maintenance remained the same, but her understanding of what was possible had been transformed completely. The rifles in her care now included systems capable of precision at distances that would have seemed like science fiction just a year earlier. Her responsibility was to train other soldiers to push beyond their perceived limitations, to discover what became possible when preparation met determination and skill aligned with courage. Elena pulled out her original service rifle and began the familiar cleaning routine. Despite all the advanced equipment and specialized training, the fundamentals remained unchanged. Precision, whether at 400 meters or 4,000 meters, still came down to the basics: proper sight picture, controlled breathing, smooth trigger squeeze, and the mental discipline to execute under pressure. Outside the armory windows, new students were arriving for the advanced training program Elena would soon lead. They came with various backgrounds and experience levels, but all shared the desire to discover the limits of human precision and mechanical accuracy. Elena's journey from competent sniper to record-setting precision shooter had taught her that the most important targets were often the ones that seemed impossible to reach. By accepting challenges that pushed beyond comfort zones, by preparing systematically for extraordinary demands, and by maintaining faith in fundamental principles under extreme pressure, seemingly impossible objectives could become remarkable achievements. The program Elena would develop would pass these lessons to future generations of military snipers. But more than specific techniques or equipment knowledge, she would share the understanding that human potential, when properly focused and prepared, could reach far beyond apparent limitations. As she finished cleaning her rifle and prepared to meet her new students, Elena understood that her greatest shot had been the decision to accept Prophet's original challenge. Everything that followed, the technical achievements, operational successes, and expanded capabilities, had grown from that single moment of willingness to attempt something that seemed beyond her reach. The targets waiting for future students would be even more challenging, the distances even more extreme, the precision requirements even more demanding. But Elena now knew that with proper preparation, systematic training, and unwavering determination, tomorrow's impossible shots could become today's remarkable achievements. The only real limitations were those accepted without challenge, the boundaries left unexplored because they seemed too distant to reach. Her journey as a sniper would continue, but now she would help others discover what became possible when they refused to accept limitations and chose instead to quietly polish their rifles while preparing for shots that seemed impossible until the moment they proved they weren't.